Welcome back, folks. This is Billy and Sean. We are here with our next episode of Harnessing Your Wealth, and we're honored today to have our guest, Nicole Holgreen, who represents a foundation by the name of Bridle Up Hope.
Yeah, thank you, Billy and Sean. It's such a pleasure to be on with you today and get to share our mission and what Bridle Up Hope is all about. So I started here in 2017. Bridle Up Hope was founded and started in 2013 after Sean and Rebecca Covey, our founders, lost their beautiful daughter, Rachel, after struggling with depression. And as a family, they were trying to find direction. They were trying to find a way to turn such a hard and difficult and negative situation into a positive. Sean remembers one of his neighbors came over and he was trying to help her and she shared, Sean, you will always have a hole in your heart when it comes to Rachel. And at that time, Sean thought, no. We want to do something really beautiful and something good with this and turn it into a positive. And, as any parent losing a child in that way, turning a situation like that into a positive seems almost impossible. And so the Coveys had a lot of Rachel's friends who reached out and shared moments with Rachel, and they all seemed to be centered around her horses. And they knew that Rachel, and not only Rachel, but their other daughters, it seemed to be their daughters who really gravitated here in their family. Sean actually is not a fan of horses. He gets pissed off whenever he sits on one. We have 19 here, so he has 19 horses, but he's not a huge rider. So, but all of the friends and family just kept sharing these incredible stories of how, my parents were going through a really difficult divorce and I would go on trail rides with Rachel. I was in high school making really poor decisions and my life was headed in a really negative direction, and I would come feed horses and muck stalls, and it gave me purpose, and just story after story, girl after girl. And so the Coveys knew that they had these horses and they thought, you know what if we just start a small neighborhood riding program? Their mission was to build hope, confidence, and resilience in women and girls through horses and habits. And then Sean Covey's father is a really famous man named Stephen R. Covey, who wrote The 7 Habits for Highly Effective People. And then Sean, as a teenager, always felt like his dad's teachings were boring as a teenager. At the time, it sold 40 million copies, and it was one of the first, life skills, impactful books of its kind. In fact, Sean likes to share all the rejection letters that they got when they went to publishing, but it changed so many lives. Every athlete, business, individual seeking, leveling up was using these life skills. And so Sean, as a teenager, was like, well, teens and kids can be leaders too. And so Sean has since written the teen version of his father's book, and he's helped bring the Leader in Me program with Franklin Covey into schools. And so, as the Coveys were developing this equestrian program, they thought, we know the 7 habits are changing lives every day in different ways. What if we pull them in to this equestrian program and see what happens? And what was intended to be a small neighborhood riding program had almost a girl in every household reaching out. And then their moms were reaching out and saying, this is my daughter's having these incredible experiences. I want this in my life too. And, we've had grand champions who have ridden here, and we've had girls who have never even touched a horse join our program. And we've brought individuals into the equestrian world that, never even envisioned themselves having horses. In fact, all of the area and different shops and things here near headquarters, we go in if we have logoing, they're like, oh, we love you guys. And I'm like, I'm sure you do. We have a lot of girls who I'm sure come to visit, and, getting their first set of boots and bringing the habits into their homes. And so fast forward to 2017, that's where I found Bridle Up Hope myself. And I was going through a really difficult divorce that I did not see coming. I feel like when we're going through our own hard, it feels so lonely. I mean, I honestly felt like I was the only human who had ever gone through a divorce. Obviously, logically,
Yeah.
that's simply not the case. But it was just a really lonely time. And I had two teenagers who were going through their own journey through all of that and really trying to be able to show up, as my world was kind of coming apart at the time. And so I had a dear friend who I rode horses with her, and she said, she could tell something was going on. And I was really quiet kind of about the details of, I wasn't even sure of all the details as things were coming. But she said, you should go ride horses where I teach. And I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And so I signed up. This is, back in 2017, and we were much smaller at that time. We did about 25 lessons a week. We had 5 horses. I was in just a small farmhouse that we own here as well on the property now that we've expanded. And I remember coming and feeling just such peace here. Um, and I had been working in the mortgage industry. I was processing and doing mortgage loans, and um, loved my team, loved my job. Never envisioned, very corporate, very, more male dominated, and we're an all girls program here. So I just never envisioned, working for nonprofit. I really enjoyed what I did and had a great group. And so I came and experienced the program firsthand, and I found it to be so empowering. I remember the first time doing groundwork with a horse. Like I mentioned, I'm not an equestrian. I think, I've done some trail rides and, ridden horses on a beach in the Bahamas, but not anything, professional. And so unlike most of my staff here. So as I was experiencing this, I remember doing groundwork with one of our horses. And, my guard was up, which I feel like many of us are like that when we're going through difficult times. You have your game face and you kind of shut down in private and go through what you're going through and really kind of hide your heart. I feel like a lot of us do that. We all have hard. Um, and I feel like for me, I was ashamed. I felt like I had failed and was trying to be a good mom and show up for those, people who are in my life. And the mortgage industry, you don't really take mental health days. You have deadlines and you have money on the line and you show up. And so I was trying to do that even though there was a lot going on. And as I was going through this, I came and I wrote and I was doing groundwork. And I remember my instructor, Cindy, I was doing groundwork and she, pointed out, she said, I just want to point out a few things about what's going on between you and this horse right now. And she said, where a horse's ears are is where his eyes are. Where are his ears? And I can remember thinking and looking and being like, well, they're on you. And she's like, if you're the one in the round pen with him, and she was coaching me through this, dance. And she said, why do you think his ears are on me if you're the one giving him instructions? And I said, he knows you. He can tell I don't know what I'm doing. I had all these things. And she said, how are you standing? And I felt like I was just standing. I didn't think there was anything really important about the way I was standing. And she said, you know what? Stand taller. And I kind of straightened out, and this horse's ears immediately pivoted toward me. And she said, horses are herd animals. He's looking for who the leader is. And so you need to be the leader or he's going to be the leader. And then, as I asked him to turn and change directions, he turned his hind end toward me and kind of kicked out. And she said, I want to point out something else. When a horse turns his hind end toward you, it's kind of a form of disrespect. And so he's pushing back, he's being disrespectful. And so the next time he does that, I want you to kind of lift the training stick, have him move his feet a little quicker, have energy in your body, let him know that that's not okay. And I did this. And, next time I asked him to turn, he turned with his head toward me. And then she said, Monty Roberts join up is kind of this process, and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And she said, I want you to lower your training stick. And I did. And she said, I want you to turn your back toward this horse and just kind of stand here for a minute. And, not equestrian here. I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. That horse was just being disrespectful. This 1,000-pound animal that I'm not used to, being around. And she, this horse came up behind me and she said, take us a few steps. And he followed me around and really, she's like, he sees you as the leader now as you've gone through this direction. She goes, this is an instinctual thing with horses. And, you could do it with a wild mustang. It's going to take a lot quicker feed if you're going to do it with a less domesticated horse. But
Mm-hmm.
she then went on and said, how are you showing up in your own life? How are you being a leader? How are you pushing back when you're being disrespected or boundaries? And I thought it was the most brilliant way of teaching life skills and leadership. She pulled in the 7 habits, talked about how, I was being proactive in my own life. And I felt like it took my walls down. I was so present. I was so present because I was working with this, the horse is a delivery tool of these life skills. And so I had a transformational experience. I was able to navigate things. I was able to seek to understand in situations I feel like were naturally reactive. I was able to be lifted. So I was able to show up as a parent. And for myself, I think that's one of the biggest things. I feel like it really taught me how to be a friend for myself, which I don't think I really did well before that. And I was 38 at the time. And, we start at ages 12 and up. And I feel like if we can teach, teenage girls to be a friend for themselves, like what a superpower. If you get annoyed with yourself, you can't take a day off or a break, or, you're gonna, every time you wake up, you're there.
That's
And so
right.
to have yourself be an advocate. And so then in one of my lessons, my instructor said, it was just one of those moments. She was in the middle of sharing, 7 habit material. And she said, I'm just feeling impressed that I should tell you that there's a program director position at the time that had opened up. And it was kind of one of those moments, time stood still, it just was like a moment of peace. And I'm a very logical individual, and mortgages are based on numbers, and so there's a lot of logic with
Mm-hmm.
that. And so um I can remember saying out loud, well, this doesn't make any sense. It was, like a 75% pay cut that they were looking at. I was like, I think I'm being sued for alimony right now. I don't even know if I can switch jobs. I think that might be against my divorce right now. And it was just a really interesting time. And then, I came and met with Michael Sean Covey, the executive director at the time, who's the Covey son. And then he called me back and asked me to come and meet with his incredible mom, Rebecca Covey. And um, then I got a phone call, and each time I said, you guys are incredible. What you're doing is amazing. It's been really impactful in my life. I just feel like the timing is off. And again, I'm not an equestrian. I have a very different background than, most there. And then, Sean Covey calls. And if you know Sean, he's an incredible human being. But he said, hi, I don't think we've had a chance to meet. My name's Sean Covey. And I'm wondering if you'll come go for a walk with me and just have a conversation. He said, I don't even know if you've actually applied for this position. He said, we've had a lot of individuals who were more qualified than you in this area on paper, but for some reason, we all just keep coming back to you. I thought, what in the world is going on here? I came in a skirt and 4-inch heels to go for a walk on an equestrian property with Sean Covey. That kind of tells you the background. I came on walking on my toes, so I didn't bang up my heels, and walk this property. And now I'm a boots and jeans kind of girl. But it was just such a moment of peace, and there was just such an incredible, just knowing in that moment that this is where I needed to be. And I've never looked back. We've expanded to almost 100 lessons a week, to 13 locations around the world. We have 9 locations that are in process right now, and have expanded and added a location development director, looking for like-minded individuals who own and operate their own equestrian facilities, building hope, confidence, and resilience in women and girls all over the world. We have a location in the Ukraine.
Wow, saw that on your website.
Yeah,
Yes.
we
Is that
looked it
just
up.
crazy?
Crazy.
We were pretty impressed. You guys are making inroads all over the world like that.
Yeah, it's
I'm
just really
interested.
simple.
I want to get into that a little bit deeper. Is how you guys. Let's make sure our listeners understand the program
Right.
itself. So the program involves you guys essentially contracting with farms or ranches, locations that have their own facility. For example, horses that are broke well enough for
Yes.
inexperienced riders to come out and learn to ride, to take care of horses, to do all the things around horses. You're not talking about, having them get in the stall where the horse has never been handled before, right?
Correct. Yeah.
There can be liability issues, and I'm sure you thought
100%.
through all of
Yeah.
those issues. Um, but your program is very unique in that you guys don't have to provide all of the resources. You find people who want to do that, and then you help spread it across different communities, right? So tell us
Exactly.
how that works.
So each of our locations are their own nonprofit or 501(c)(3) here in the States. And they're individuals who approach us and own their own facility, usually already have horses in a background and, barns just across the world. Like-minded individuals, we make sure that the locations are safe, clean, peaceful space.
Mhm.
Our location is on 131 acres with 19 horses, but some of our locations have, an acre and four horses and just peaceful space where women and girls can come and find healing. It's for girls and women. The program is over with the girls. It goes for 14 weeks, and their lessons are an hour and 15 minutes, and they would come once a week for 14 weeks. Where our women come, quite honestly, their lessons are 2 hours long, so 45 minutes longer, just because we talk longer.
Maybe
We
attention span
yeah,
too. I
right.
mean, young teenagers, they can only go so long, right?
Yes.
Well, they're learning how to use that riding, that training stick to take it home
Yes.
to their husband and to be a
Maybe,
handler.
yeah.
Yeah, no, it's kind of our own social experiment. So when our women's program and girls program, when the women's program launched, it was the same setup as our girls program, but the women are more open to the seven habits as well. Our teens generally don't show up excited to learn life skills. Their
They want to
parents
ride horses.
Yes, they're here for the horses. So it's more like 1,000 to 2,000 pound object lesson where the habits are integrated throughout, where the women come with life experiences and challenges and goals, and they're more open to the life skills side. So they would spend like an hour in the classroom, hour with the horses, kind of integrating them into, where they need more hope, confidence, and resilience. And that looks so different. We're not a clinical program, so we don't have therapists, psychologists. We aren't a treatment center of any kind. We're equine-assisted learning. Um, and so
When you
these
say classroom, so you're asking these facilities to have a space where you can
space,
teach
yeah,
things like the seven
generally a,
habits.
a restroom and a classroom space where they can, teach the seven habits. We lease the seven habits from Franklin Covey, and we integrate them through our materials. So a location would find us, get approved, become certified in the seven habits materials. We add them to our website. They would have applications coming in directly to their foundations. Any fundraising for scholarships and other things would go directly to their foundation. It wouldn't come through headquarters. We're just here as a support. We do monthly calls, which range completely different based off of the location and the things that they're working through, whether it's, getting quality hay to our Ukraine location is, going through war. So, we do a yearly certification with all of our locations where they come, and some of them are online and some of them are in person. And this year, our Ukraine location was online, and they actually had to go to shelters because there was missile warnings there in Chernihiv,
Oh my
Ukraine.
God.
And they have
Crazy.
80 students a week, 40 girls, 40 women,
80?
80 students a week. I know. Is that incredible? They have a wait list of 600 right
So
now.
they were a charity before they found you, or you found them. How did that work? And then
So,
how does this blend together and make synergy?
right. Sometimes I don't even believe some of it myself because we joke that Bridle Up Hope has its own gravity. People like you ask our staff, our students, and you say, how'd you find Bridle Up Hope? And almost always they'll say, oh, Bridle Up Hope found me. And, I agree. I wasn't looking for an equestrian
Hmm.
program in the middle of what I was going through. It wasn't even on my radar. And so, yeah, it's just such a gift to have in our lives. And so, um, our Ukraine location specifically, we had a nonprofit that had received a donation for a vehicle to a charity in Ukraine, and they were using that vehicle to get food supplies and therapists in and out of Chernihiv specifically. There was a lot of women who had been through a lot of trauma as a result of the war. They had seen, spouses killed. Some of them had gone through some sexual abuse as part of the war and the initial invasion. And so there's a lot of just women and girls who were struggling in that area. And so they were bringing therapists in, and the individual followed up about the vehicle. It was our Mapleton location. They have a family charity here in Utah, and they had donated a vehicle, and they had reached out to say, how is the therapy working, for those women and girls? And the individual, Andre, who was overseeing the project, said, we have these women and girls who we bring the therapists in, but there's this fence line right on the property where they're coming, and there's horses on the other side of that fence. And the horses come up to the fence, and I feel like the women and girls just line up right there, and the horses are actually doing more therapy than the therapists are. And, they had no idea that they were talking with, our Mapleton location, what they operate there on their site. And they said, you know what, you need to speak with Sean and Rebecca Covey. Let me give you their contact information. And at the time, Sean and Rebecca's son, Weston Covey, was serving a mission, and he had left to go to Ukraine, and he actually ended up being on the border in Poland because the war broke out. And so he was helping with refugees as they were fleeing the area. And they had, a place in their heart for our Ukraine area. And so I'd been out of town, and I got back, and I hopped on a meeting with Rebecca, and she was a lot of small talk. And me and Rebecca, I adore her, but we don't generally have a ton of time for a lot of small talk. And it was just a lot of, how have you been? What have you been up to? And I was like, okay.
What do you want?
Yes, what's going on? What's going on? And we always joke that if Rebecca comes in a room and says, so you better buckle up, because that woman has a vision.
Got an idea.
Yes. And so she said, I think we should open a location in Ukraine. And, at the time, like, we're watching the news. It is not something that we thought would be. I said, Rebecca, and a lot of my job is to say no and keep us mission focused. There's a lot of opportunities out there that actually can take away from your mission, even though they're, incredible opportunities. It's still, you have to stay focused on your impact. And so I was like, shoot, I'm gonna have to say no to Ukraine, because I felt like food, shelter, there were more immediate needs, right? And so she said, just let's seek to understand. They want to hop on a call. They said that they have a barn there, and they just want to have a conversation. And so, I got on this call with this group, and I said, I feel like right now, Natasha was the barn owner, and she's an incredible woman. And through translators, I said, I feel like there's more immediate needs there. And she said, food will get us through the week, shelter will get us through the winter, but the women and the people here in Ukraine need right now is hope, and what you have is hope. And, sweet Rebecca Covey is sitting off screen, and she just smiles and shrugs her shoulders and looks at me like, well, it's up to you. And so from that moment, I was all in, 100% in. And, we sponsored 4 incredible women to come and certify here in Utah at our headquarters for 2 weeks. We had translators available. We had materials. We had donors who ended up helping sponsor that location, just because, their abilities to be self-sufficient were a little, obviously it's a lot more difficult there in that area. And they are killing it there. They are just doing incredible work. One of our board members had the opportunity to go and visit the facility there. And she said, Nicole, you wouldn't even believe it. Bridle Up Hope has become the center of that community. And it's not just changing these women's lives. They're taking it into their homes, and they're changing their families, and they're changing their environment. And we were laughing because, the woman who did cookies for one of their graduations opened a bakery. The woman who was helping with their photo shoots ended up opening a photo company, doing photo shoots. And she had tons of horse-based photo shoots that she ended up doing. The translator who we were working directly with opened a company helping with translation. And they're like, it's creating such energy in this community and hope in a time that really feels hopeless for those people. And I think it actually translates over to all of our locations, whether it's New Mexico, Texas, California. We have 2 in California, 2 in Idaho, 4 in Utah, Estonia, Guadalupe. I mean, we have locations all over the world. Our Budapest, Hungary location, they're all helping impact their community. And Rebecca really has a motto that is, if you can save a woman or a girl, you can save a generation. And so it really does trickle into the home. It helps shift paradigms, um, and through these amazing animals.
What about, I'm curious with you have all these locations and you have a waiting list, right? Or you have more coming up.
Yeah.
What would motivate someone to want to be a location? Is it just the horses get utilized more, or they just want to help? They just want to be a part of something? What motivates different ranches to
For
hop
each
onto that?
location, it's individual.
Hmm.
Our most recent location, they have a barn, they have a facility. The wife in that family, she just has felt like she's wanted to do a lesson program. And when she found us online, she's like, "Oh my gosh, we have a need like this in our community." And there is a charge for the program. Each location determines, what their price point would be for their demographic in their area.
Right.
We offer partial scholarships based off of household income, and we have donors that, step in and help with scholarships. Uh, and each location, helps with their fundraising in that area. And so a lot of them will start, with a couple scholarships available, and then, the word of mouth. They'll have a participant do the program, and then they want to give back.
Hmm.
So everyone pays what they're capable of paying. Sometimes you have, a single mom who has a daughter who's going through a lot of anxiety and just the difficultness of high school, and can't afford the full program. So she'll pay $50 a month for 18 months, and we bridge that gap for her. Um, and so at headquarters, our girls program is 2,500, our women's program is 1,500, and we offer partial scholarships. And we partner with, as we've expanded and grown here at headquarters, we look for a lot of, vulnerable populations that normally wouldn't have the opportunity to be here. We've even had groups who have helped with transportation because we've had some of our location or our students who don't have that as an option. That's not even something that I thought would be an issue. Horseback riding lessons, getting transportation to and from, it didn't even cross my mind. And then you watch, we're all about the one, so all of our lessons are one-on-one. And so,
Do you
you
have to have a trainer, somebody that's experienced and knows what they're doing?
yes,
You teach
yes,
them what? So the location, the farm
yes.
pays Bridle Up Hope some sort of a license fee to be a part of the program, and then from there the participants, who do they pay? Do they pay that farm to be
They pay
going
that
through the program?
location, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's a $4,500 initial certification fee for each barn and location. Um, and then there's a yearly $1,500 fee. And then we lease the 7 Habits from Franklin Covey. So there's a $10 student yearly fee. And those are the only fees that are involved with headquarters. Everything else, all of the enrollment, the funds, would go directly to that location. They would oversee all of the management of their facility, their horses, their
Okay. But your
they
headquarters comes out and like certifies like their staff, let's call it, to
yeah.
understand the program and what you're teaching and everything.
So they would come to headquarters here in Alpine. They spend
Oh,
a week here, 9 to 5. It's like drinking from a fire hose. And then we have, we start off with like weekly coaching calls for a few weeks, and then we go to monthly. And then we're on calls each month going through whatever it is.
yeah.
Sometimes we're talking about, how do you make sure you don't have burnout with your horses? How many lessons do you feel like with this many horses would be a good fit for the barn? Horse training, do you bring in outside horse trainers? Do you have an on-site horse trainer? What does that look like? We're an equestrian program, so we're a bit different than like your equine therapy model where you'd be led around while doing talk therapy. Our girls are learning the skills, so they're learning how to walk and then trot and then loping and just really, really expanding. We even have, girls who get to a point where they're jumping up to 2 feet here. And then they go off and, they're competing, they're queening, they're doing things outside in the equestrian world. But this was a place where they found peace during a difficult time. And so I love to see how, their lives level up But then the horses become a hobby that they just are so invested in and love. It just, girls who have never, I remember working with a student here, and when she first got here, she was shaking because she was scared of the horses. And she's standing on one of our steps with her two hands on a horse. And the horse is looking at her like, what's she doing? Is she going to get on or not?
Yeah.
And, it took a few lessons before we could even get her on that horse. Just being around an animal of that size was, as much as she could handle. And then to watch her confidence build, not only through horses, but also through her personal life. I feel like the two really do mirror each other. And when you're struggling, like the horses can tell. They're such intuitive animals.
Oh, the energy that you bring, the horse kind of exposes that, I think, a lot of ways. And
So much.
The fear that she may have been showing, and I've seen it, I've been around horses my whole life. You probably know by now, but you see kind of how people live their own life, or maybe their childhood traumas or something of that nature.
Right.
And so the anxiety and the depression and all those things that the horse can sense when there's something going on. And you mentioned it earlier, is just getting present, finding you can release some of those daily grind issues that you're dealing with, that you keep you up at night or keep your mind so occupied that it can destroy your health. Right. And we've all been, well, I'm a big advocate of the health issue just by knowing what causes poor health. 99% of it is just the worries and stresses and tensions that our minds create. So with the horse program, I think that's one of the best. Personally, I can't think of anything different for especially a young girl to get involved and know what life should be like. Detach from your phone, the social media, all of the things that this day and age, I think, is so far removed from how we were supposed to live and intended to live. We cannot handle the constant flow of information that we're feeding ourselves. So I'm really happy I have two young granddaughters right now. They're both 1 year old, and they're already marching around out there in my barn and like they own the place, so I have good hope for them.
When do they start picking stalls?
Well, as soon as they can hold on to that pitchfork.
As they can lift
I love it.
I would also comment, we all on this podcast know how expensive horses can be.
Right.
So your program fees are inexpensive, in my opinion, for someone that wants to have that hobby and get involved. And then the scholarships you offer for people that maybe still can't even afford that. I think that's really, really cool.
And
that you were doing
on that note, you mentioned it's 1 day a week, like 1.5 hours, something like that. What happens when these girls or young women get to the point they want more?
They catch the bug.
Hey, I want to get involved in this on a daily basis. How can I come more often? Do you ever have that?
Right. So we have 3 pillars to our program. So it's the horses, the habits, and then our third pillar is kind of the community pillar. And you're so wise to point out, Billy, I feel like connection is something that we're all having a weird shift with right now. We're more connected and less connected in so many different ways. You can be on social media and know what your neighbor had for lunch and where she had it. But when's the last time you had a personal conversation with that person? When we hear someone knock at our door now, are you running to the door to see who it is? Or are you
get on your nest?
I'm getting on
my
phone.
I'm not answering that.
I'm going to try to get this conversation.
No. It's such a weird shift. And I don't even know that we fully understand, because so many things have changed so drastically as far as, our screens are going. And we're seeing that a lot in our teens, where there's a lack of disconnect. And so our service pillar allows our women and girls to come back to the barn. They help feed our horses. They help muck stalls. We even will have, we call them sharpen the saw classes, which is the 7th habit. And we'll have a yoga class out in the grass in our amphitheater. And we'll talk about breath work and connecting with.
John wants to go to that. Can you allow him in for that one class?
I have a breathwork coach, and it is, for anyone who doesn't know what that is, look it up. Go try it. It might seem weird for all you guys listening to this, but it's pretty powerful.
Okay.
And it's a lot better than throwing medication down your throat and a needle and all that stuff.
Agree with that one.
Yeah.
100%.
So important. So important. And so simple. Just a lot of this is getting back to, like you said, Billy, what we're wired to do. And so as the women and girls, they come to service hours, we have things going on daily here at the barn. Some of our locations don't operate daily. Some of them operate, 4 days a week or 3 days a week. And just because they have a family facility there as well, where, our location here at headquarters is solely for Bridle Up Hope. No one lives on site as a home base. But as they come to these classes, every 10 hours is an earned lesson. And so our alumni can stay engaged here. They can come, they can give back. A lot of our students have become employees. We'll have a service lead who's helped leading our girls in barn chores. As people come to Utah and take tour of our location here, some of the feedback I get is this is the cleanest barn I've ever seen. And it's not because we have people come in and clean. It's because everyone who walks these halls and meets these horses sees it as their own. And so they're, mucking that stall. I always laugh because our property manager, if it rains here and there's mud in the runs for 15 minutes, he's going to get a picture and a text from somebody. We need more sand. We need shavings, heaven forbid.
Poor horses can't stand that kind of mud. This is terrible conditions for these animals.
I mean, these are the most spoiled 19 horses with 3,000 women and girls who love them. So it's been really beautiful to watch. If our horses get a paper cut, I'll get a picture of it. And should we put some medicine on this? And I'm like, if you wouldn't put a Band-Aid on it for yourself, I promise he doesn't even know
fine.
So, but no, it's just been so amazing. And also bringing people into this community. I've had multiple girls who end up getting their own horses or moving further out where they can have property. I feel like, farms and equestrian, it's a dying race. It's, land's being sold and developed, and horses are expensive and difficult to own. And so bringing more people into this world is incredible.
That's the beautiful part, because I think I've noticed, you probably noticed, this huge shift in what used to be when I grew up was just miles and miles of green fields, tractors, in our little hometown of Morgan, there's still no stoplights. Now, unfortunately, that's going to change. I have a feeling everything gets.
Well, it's starting to take like 30 minutes. I mean, I don't live there anymore, but going there, it's different now. To get like on the freeway, there's a line of traffic. Like,
there's guys still driving
their
tractor, or they're side by side down the road. Some guys ride their horse still, but what I'm saying is all the old farms slowly get chopped up and turned into properties or real estate developments and condominiums or a new housing development. So to that point, the farms, the barns, the traditional way of life where you grow up being responsible for animals and taking care of them, and they take care of you and your family, it's depleting, it's disappearing.
Right.
And so finding the locations, it's not as easy. And just knowing the people, the population continues to expand, and we're facing the problem just in the inner cities. Just think about the crime, the gangs, oh my gosh, so many problems that are occurring around the world, and our tensions are at all-time highs. Just in this country, we're divided on nearly every topic. There's always somebody that it goes against, even common sense stuff, in my opinion. But even having said that, the things that you're doing and to continue to help provide locations for people to come back to reality, I'll call it, come back to what's real, is very empowering, I think, for these young girls.
It's been amazing to watch, and that it's in the middle. We work with, inpatient care facilities, whether it's for, depression or if it's for something like eating disorder. We have connections with other treatment facilities. But it's in the middle. It's not just something as simple as an extracurricular activity, and it's not something as invasive as like inpatient care or a treatment center. And so I think it's great when you're just kind of in a space where you could use a level up, or I have women who come who, they've been a mom for years and their kids grow up and leave home, and they are going through empty nest phase, and they're like, what in the world? I've lost purpose.
Yeah.
I don't know that we bring enough attention to that moment in time, because it's almost like losing a job, losing your purpose. Kids still need you when they're gone, but suddenly your day-to-day is very different. And so you have women who feel like their worth just dissolved. And so they come and they're like, I'm trying to find who I am all over again at, 55. And, I have young moms who come who are going through postpartum after having their first child, and that's some of the heaviest shame I've ever sat in. When a mom doesn't even dare to tell you why she found you. And I felt that way too when I came going through divorce. I never imagined that I would be getting divorced. I don't think any of us enter marriage thinking they would. Um, it wasn't even on my radar. And then here I am, thinking, I failed at the game of life,
Yeah.
or someone who has had, I have a woman who started here, and she was on probation. Her kids had gone into foster care. She had been through years and years of addiction. She had just gotten sober about a year ago, and she's like, I'm ready to really level up my life. And she was here in her final lesson when she received the notice that she was getting removed from probation. She said, I haven't been off of probation for 12 years.
Wow.
And she just talked about, I never thought I'd be actually building a life. I just have always been in survival. That's the life that I knew. And so it's so individual, but it's just, we have, the cheerleader who's been cut from her cheerleading team and has just lost purpose, to the girl who was sexually abused by a convicted felon and is going through the trial of that individual at the age of 12. We have seen so many different backgrounds. And that's something that we've learned too. Everyone will ask, like, who is this program for? I'm like, if you don't need clinical interventions, and you're just in a place where you just need more, we don't define what that looks like. You don't have to have, and I think Rachel Covey is a perfect example of that.
Mm-hmm.
She had an incredible family. She had resources. She had an amazing life, and she's not here.
Mm-hmm.
And so to judge someone's resilience, or if they are in need of something like this, we don't do that. We get a sign up, we go through. If the individual is in a healthy space enough to be able to be in our program, not needing inpatient care or something like that, they come, and it's such an individual journey. I've had daughters do the program, and they come home and they suddenly are just less reactive and just have a peace. And sometimes the parents can't even explain exactly what the change has been. And sometimes the girl can't either.
Mm-hmm.
I have a 16-year-old who spoke at one of our graduations, and she got up, Sean Covey was there. He spoke as well, and he's in the audience, and this 16-year-old got up and she said, I came to Bridle Up Hope for horses, not habits. And I kind of cringed. I'm like, yeah, we know that, but you don't say it. I look at Sean, and he's looking at me like, where is this headed? But she went on to say, as I was preparing to speak, I read through the habits, and I realized you'd sneakily woven them into me like a tapestry, and they become part of who I am and how my life has changed while I was here playing with horses. And she goes, in my mind, the horses were the change, but really the 7 habits were intertwined through my horse and through my instructor. And they're the reason I've had this impact in my life. And then, her mom calls and says, hey, my daughter's graduated and she's had such I want to do this. And then, I've had grandmothers come. I have an instructor who teaches here who's 74. And, on her 70th birthday, she hiked the Grand Canyon rim to rim. And she teaches women every day that, this isn't the end of your novel. There's chapters ahead. And what are you doing, with your future? So it's really cool to watch.
It's a total shift mentally, spiritually. I think that's
right.
It's unique, as I said before, but I told you before we started the show, we started our own foundation years ago in 2009 after my brother took his life.
Yeah.
Similar reasons, but one of the biggest overriding factors for him was depression about his financial situation with regards to getting in debt because of his desire to be successful in life. He wanted to be an MBA. He had this desire to be in the racetrack management world. I think he was kind of following along my footsteps in the racing world. He loved it. He had a passion for horse racing, but he was attending graduate school, Colorado State, and he got into kind of a bad situation with depression, and he started worrying about the mounting debt and dealing with an on again, off again relationship with his girlfriend at the time. And then he started the dreaded medication program. And I think that's so the quick fix answer. That's a huge problem in our country today. I really truly believe the pharmaceutical industry is wrecking way more people than they're helping with the prescription drugs that they prescribe. This is my opinion. I'm just going to state it. But with regards to sleeping medication and then antidepressant medication and mixing the two and then become suicidal in a lot of ways. But his was kind of a compounding effect. We started the foundation as a legacy for him. And what we do is help young students, young adults understand financial terms. So become financially literate in the world and have something to look forward to feel good about, not get themselves subject to mountains of debt. And so we teach them the basics of investing and tax minimization and debt minimization and all the things that go along with your career, jobs, and retirement planning and benefits, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. I mean, I've taught that course for, I think every year. I think that was one of my first jobs. Like, hey, you're going to teach, we're going to do, so Billy started this, and it was in Zion's Bank in their basement. And there was, I don't know, 25, 30 kids. And now we hosted at Weber State, and there's 500-600 kids. Yeah. And so I've watched this grown over the years, and it's so fun to teach them all this. And then you get the kids that come up after. Tell me more about a mutual fund. Tell me more about a Roth IRA. Right. How can I become, rich? Rich sounds like a bad term nowadays.
A millionaire.
Everybody wants to be a millionaire, I would think. Right. They'll be financially secure, and it's impactful to all these students.
But we've gone through our share of heartaches.
We have.
Trouble.
Probably like you have in your role, that we
and
things that work and don't work.
Like finding a need, seeing where there was an issue and turning it into a positive. Losing your brother, I'm sure, was, heavy and hard, and that's where it could have stopped, right? But you looked at the situation and you thought, where can we have impact? Where could he have used impact and wisdom and support, and then looking out for a demographic. Like I have so many teens and young adults who come here, and financial literacy is real. Having someone say, I'm living off of student loans, and you're like, whoa, hi.
Come to our classroom. Let's sit down for a minute. Yeah.
And seeing how that can impact them long term and keep them in poverty. So I love that you're doing that and creating. That was one of our Sharpen the Saw classes. We had, someone who was doing queening who came, and that was part of her platform. She did a financial literacy class with our students and just talked about, debt and being wise in your choices, and then turning it into a positive. And it trickles out into the community. It creates individuals who are resilient. And helps eliminate some of the things that maybe are dragging others down. Our world right now has such an instant gratification. Children graduate from high school and they want to move out into what their parents have spent a lifetime achieving. They want the house that, their parents have spent a lifetime accruing the assets and resources to build. Right. And, so they're jumping into debts that they have no business jumping into. So no, I think that is incredible work that you're doing.
A lot of that is social media influencers, so to speak. Telling you, buy a house, then rent that one and lease this one, and then buy another one. And then pretty quick, you own the whole neighborhood. And none of that stuff.
Just rent it back to yourself.
Real, it's all.
Yes. Yeah. And they're seeing that, right? So you're so great to jump in and be like, hey, there's easier ways to do this. Don't jump into something that's over your head. It's
it's a lot of fake influencing, I'll call it, and people don't really get started down the right path. But you're going, and what you're doing, and hopefully what we're doing as well, is you're setting a foundation under people where they can spill that over into the rest of the world or the community that they're involved. And so it's a pay it forward type of approach where they're no longer dragging from the resources. They're no longer requiring assistance and aid and help and people that come to their rescue all the time, right? They're now giving back. They're able to help. They're not taking from the pie. They're helping create it. And
I love that. I love that. Yeah, that's actually, in fact, that's how the 7 habits work. It works. The first habits are the foundation. We talk about a tree and the growth of it, and it's exactly what you're explaining. You work on self first, and so you're looking at shifting negative paradigms and digging into principles and looking at your circle of control, and so you're focused on yourself, and then you're branching out. You're learning relationships, so seeking to understand and synergy, and then you're going into kind of where you are in the giving back, right? Because you can't really build others and give back if you haven't even taken care of you. And so,
Yes.
yeah, that's exactly what we're about, that growth, that impact, that spreading. You used a pie, we use the visual of a tree, the growing and then giving back. But yeah, exactly.
That's
Your
fantastic.
program's really cool. And I can't, I'm sitting here kind of thinking about, sorry, my mom. She passed away, and it's coming up October 19th, 2020. And I just, sorry, I think it's the first time anyone's cried on your podcast, but
he doesn't often, but I think he needs to open up on this.
Had she found something like your program, you never know.
No,
she got into the anxiety, depression, as her mom had the same issues. And, the first step was medication, and that spiraled into addiction. And then it spiraled out of control, and she ended up taking her own life. So what you're doing, so powerful. Anyone's hearing this and feeling that way about themselves, reach out. There's people like you, programs like you, that can help. So I just wanted to say that. And miss you, Mom, if you're listening to this, and love you.
Cheers. Yeah, too. And it's just it's a hopeless time when you're in that space. It's lonely, and so we have individuals come who are completely defeated. And they just need a hand. And for me, I was in that space. I was on my knees when I found this place, and it gave me a lift. And so I think that's what it is. And so, we look for like-minded barns. We try and have them spaced out for enrollment. Kind of back east, we're looking for locations right now and further north. But yeah, there's so many individuals who have incredible mindset. Rebecca was saying, she goes, equestrian people are just nice.
That's why we like working with them.
Yeah, we do.
Salt of the earth.
Yeah, you can trust them. A handshake, it really works.
Right.
What about the plans for you and the organization? Are you actively out there on a daily basis? Is that what you're trying to do, is find other barns to join?
Yes, we are. Yeah. We're kind of targeting east. Utah has 4 locations right now, and we wouldn't mind a location more Tooele area or where we have a need. But yeah, we're branching out, we're expanding, we're growing, we're finding individuals. And I told you before we started, we find ourselves in a lot of rooms and a lot of platforms, and sometimes I don't know why initially. I end up finding why later. Just like our Ukraine call, I'm sitting on a call with translators in Ukraine thinking, how the heck did I end up here? And then next thing I know, I'm reaching out to my husband saying, you're, sponsoring 4 women to come to the United States as refugees. Will you send me all your financial information? And he's like, sorry, what? And he's a great team player. So he sent everything over and let me know. I hope you're all I can handle, but I'm willing to help where I can. But, and I'm watching them take this certification, these life skills home, and the impact that's trickled out in the community through horses. I mean, so simple and so beautiful and so right in front of us.
Yeah, and be careful if your daughter or granddaughter starts down that horse path, because the financial commitment's going to be pretty large.
I had a dad tell me, though, and this is such a dad thing to say. His daughter came into the program when she's about 15, kind of going through a little bit of a rebellious stage. And he said, you know what? I should speak at your events and tell dads that every daughter before they start to date should do this program, because if they can learn to set boundaries with a 1,000-pound animal, they'll be equipped better to be dating. And I thought,
That's
He said, it builds their confidence. It helps them set boundaries. And I was like, that's beautiful. That's such
that
a
is
dad thing to say in regards to their daughters. So, and
That
he's
is a
that's a
been
good
good
dad.
at
He's thinking
it.
ahead.
Yeah, yeah, it was
Take
incredible.
care of yourself, right? You have the ability to handle that. You
Yeah,
can handle yourself in real life, and I think that just self-confidence. It's huge.
right. Exactly.
It's phenomenal. So for listeners out there who may have heard this story and I heard you talk about it and want to get involved, whether they want to think about their own barn, because a lot of people
Yeah.
listen to this show, are horse people, or they're listeners that, hey, they want to just, that's a great cause. They want to donate to the program. How do they
Right.
get involved?
Our website is bridleuphope.org, spelled like the horse's bridle. We should actually trademark both, the bridle, and we get both, tagged in both all the time. So bridleuphope.org. All of our locations are on there. You can donate directly to each location if you have an area that, you're focused in. You can email info@bridleuphope.org if you want to know more. If you have a daughter, a friend, a neighbor who you feel like could use this, a mom, I mean, if you have someone who you're like, hey, they're struggling, we don't know exactly what to do. Come do a tour here, do a tour at one of our locations. If you have a location that you feel like could be a facility that, is in a space that has an enrollment, yeah, come. It's such a abundance mentality. That's something that I love about Bridle Up Hope is, we meet individuals. We've worked with, I had someone say, do you ever work with therapists? Are you worried about therapists? And because they're clinical, will they take away? And I'm like, we have therapists who come and ride here and they refer students who they're working with because they feel like they could utilize this in another way. I have doctors who are part of our program who have patients who come in and they're like, this is an incredible thing. Be a part of this. This could help your daughter. This could help you in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a lot of what we do. We find people in a moment where they need us.
Yeah.
I had a group that came and did a service project, Texas Instruments. We have community events and we have, businesses that'll come out and do a service day. Different teams, different donors. Larry H. Miller Foundation is another one. United Way has come out. And I had one of these, we had an engineer who had come to just serve. He was helping take apart a riding lawnmower and put it back together. And engineers have different brains. When they took that lawnmower apart, I'm like, oh, that thing's never going to work again. And it did. A few minutes later, they were riding it down our lane. But he ended up, he came, can I come back for a tour? And I was like, sure, sure. And he brought his wife and he said, honestly, I never thought I would be looking into this for someone I know. And he's like, my wife lost her mom and she's grieving in a way that I never even thought possible. She never, expected to be going through this and she's not able to show up. She doesn't want to be a wife, doesn't want to be a mom, doesn't want to be here right now.
Right.
And then watching that transformation, for her, it was a place to grieve. And so that's something that's really beautiful about it. It's individual. Sometimes we don't even know what the person's going through because they don't share, the intimate details of their struggle, but they're taking the skills and going home and they're applying them and still having impact in the hard moments that, we all are going through. I mean, if you look back through your life, your day, sometimes you can see where, yeah, this was hard. And then just having support.
Yeah. Gosh, it's really, really impactful. I'm very touched and moved by the whole story of what you guys are doing, and you market it to locations. I mean, you have social media presence. Are you actively going out there and getting in front of teen youth groups? How do you find people?
Yeah, so word of mouth is our strongest. We have a wait list of about 45 days at headquarters. Our Mapleton location was just telling us that they have 6 months, and they're like, "What do we do? We've added more horses, we've added more staff." And she said, "The more people who do the program, the more people who sign up." And I'm like, "Yeah, it's a good problem to have, but also one that we're seeing the need in the community." And so we have booths all over. We'll do a table at a high school event, just sharing who we are and what we do. We've done news stories. We've had our students who share, but I honestly think word of mouth has been our strongest. The listeners, you may run into a friend, a neighbor, a friend telling you that their daughter's going through something hard. And, I'll sit down in a tour with a new student and I'll say, how'd you hear about it? And they will tell me, it was my friend, or it was my neighbor, or it was my therapist, or it was, I heard it in one of Stephen R. Covey's final book that he was writing with his daughter, Cynthia Holler, at the time of his passing. She finished her father's final book, and it's called Live Life in Crescendo. And there's a chapter at the end that highlights Bridle Up Hope. And it's, Stephen R. Covey's motto was always, your best work is in front of you. And just such a beautiful thing to live by. And so, sometimes it's by reading the book, or sometimes it's, something like this, Billy and Sean, you could be reaching someone who, is praying for something to help themselves, their daughter, their wife, there's a need out there for sure.
Well, we hope this show will find those folks that are looking for something different, or something to make the difference in their life, and give them that hope that there is something more, right? And they can focus on something bigger than themselves. So I think that's the Bridle Up Hope message. I'm really inspired by it. I think you guys are doing wonderful work. Thanks so much, Nicole, for being on this show with us. And for all you listeners out there,
it was an honor.
Yeah.
Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you for listening. For more information about today's show, please check out the show notes. Visit our website at www.petersonws.com or give us a call at 801-475-4002. Peterson Wealth Services is a registered investment advisor. This is a paid-for advertisement. Information presented on this program is believed to be factual and up-to-date, but we do not guarantee its accuracy, and it should not be regarded as a complete analysis of the subjects discussed. Discussions and answers to questions do not involve the rendering of a personalized investment advice, but are limited to the dissemination of general information. A professional advisor should be consulted before implementing any of the options presented. Peterson Wealth Services.